Hey everyone, Nubkeks here, and welcome to my tier list for the Varian Patch. And this one is going to be a pretty big deal because this is probably the big content patch for the end of Season 2 of Hero League. Unless, of course, they extend it by some couple of weeks or something, which they might do, but this will probably be kind of the meta, roughly speaking, that we're going to be seeing going to the end of Season 2 and grabbing those rewards. So this is pretty important. Also, this is the first tier list following BlizzCon, and we learned some new things about BlizzCon. There were some heroes that we had not really realized were that powerful before, and we saw these pro teams take them, surprise other pro teams, and really make a lot happen with some of these surprising hero picks. We're going to be seeing all of that come into the tier list today. Three things before we go into this video, as always. So number one, this is a tier list for sort of master, grandmaster level play. Also applies very much so to diamond, a little bit less to platinum, good bit less to gold, not very much to silver, and barely to bronze at all. Just generally speaking, there's different levels of play. You have different metas in each one of those. This is for the top end, and then obviously it applies less and less as you go down. Simple enough. You'll generally see easier heroes, or heroes that are countered, do better in the lower levels because, well, they're easier to play and they don't get countered, stuff like that. Number two then, what was number two? Aha, yes, I remember. So this is something for you guys to bear in mind while we're going through this. I have a three-tier system here. So just to make it clear what the tiers are. Tier number one, these are in my opinion the most powerful heroes. These are power pick heroes. I think a good way of looking at it is that each hero has a bit of a niche. There's something that they do really well in the game. The tier one heroes are those heroes which fit their niche, just fits into the way the game is played at the moment really well. So these guys are nearly always very powerful to pick. You want to grab them early in the draft often, and they're the kind of heroes that the enemy team goes, oh damn it, they got that hero. Let's say ETC, for example. The enemy team gets ETC, you go, oh damn, they got ETC. Tier 2, these are good, solid heroes. There's nothing wrong with picking them, they're fine. Their niche doesn't apply as often to Tier 1 as the Tier 1 heroes do. But if it is a case that their niche gets filled, they can be an absolutely power pick as well. Let's say, for example, going with the tanks, a Nubkeks, for example, right? He's not a very meta tank at the moment. He has this sort of anti-mage niche, and we don't see a ton of mages. But let's say, for example, they pick up a Kel'Thuz or a Jaina or a Li Ming. Suddenly, a Nubkeks actually becomes a really good pick. You've found his power spot right there in your team. You can pick him up, and he's going to do really well. But the tier 2 heroes, even without that, are pretty solid. And tier 3, the heroes that their niche really doesn't get filled that often. They're also maybe a little bit undertuned, a little bit weaker. And oftentimes the tier 1 heroes can be overtuned a little bit, be a little bit stronger as well. But yeah, these guys, you're going to want a really, really good reason to pick up tier 3 heroes. If you're just picking them up for the fun of it or because you want to play the hero, you are going to be putting your team at a disadvantage if you're picking a tier 3 hero instead of a tier 1 and then letting the enemy team pick that up. An example would be Artanis, for example. You know, he has potentially like a very, very, very niche spot in certain compositions. MVP Black ran him a bit with like a Malfurion and swapping people back into the route, but it's really awkward to play. It just doesn't fit with how the game is played anymore. Your teammates aren't going to know how to play with it, and you're just going to be, CC'd out of it, so he's not going to be good. So that gives you a bit of an insight into the tiers. And then the third thing actually is the thing that you can do, so which is that I am thinking, because as I was going through and making this tier list today, I was finding it quite difficult actually with the warriors and assassins in particular. Supports and specialists are fine because there's not that many of them, but with warrior and assassin, the tier list is getting a little bit crowded. So what I'm thinking of doing is creating an S tier as well, which are like maybe the 2 or 3 like top heroes in each role at that given time. I think you can do that for the most part. So I'll be mentioning the heroes I would put it in this video, and you guys can bear it in mind as we go through the video as well. And let me know. I do think I will bring that in next time around. But let me know what you think, just to make things a little bit clearer and to sort of spread out the tier 1 that little bit much more and make it a bit more just user friendly and so on. Well, without any further ado, let's dive right into this tier list. So, first of all, we have the warriors. Oh yeah, also, I have Varian out to the side, and the same with assassins. We'll slot him into the tier list. Once we've gone through the other warriors, we're going to go through, give a line or two in each different warrior and sort of explain where they stand. So here we go. Let's look at tier 1. The S tier for me here would be Muradin and ETC. These guys are just so strong at the moment. The CC tanks, I suppose, is how you'd look at them. They're very safe. They've got great ganks. They've got great control in team fights. Their damage is pretty pretty bad, but just the amount of control they bring is really unparalleled. And you'll often see Murden ETC bans coming out at the moment. That's going to be a big thing in this patch. Which team can grab one of them? If you grab one, then if the enemy team grabs like ETC, you really want to grab Murden for yourself, or else you're going to be left with a bit of a weaker main tank. So these guys are absolutely S tier at the moment for me. Very interesting actually to hop down to tier 2 for a second. Johanna is kind of like the backup plan if these guys get removed, right? So she fills a similar role. She brings a lot of control, crowd control, a lot of survivability, and pretty bad damage. So she fills the same sort of role as these guys, but she's just not quite as good. She's just tuned a little bit lower than these two. She really is a plan B, which is why I put her at the top of tier 2. You can go to her and have success with her if these guys are gone, but you want to grab one of these two first. Then we got our other tier 1 tanks, and these ones are pretty interesting. So we got Chen, who's up there, and I think Chen is just an absolute monster at the moment. Really disruptive, very powerful in the solo lane, great at controlling points and stuff like that. I think he really does excel in like a double warrior composition where he can just, go Storm, Earth and Fire and dive the backline and just cause massive disruption, while you have someone like he would combo well with Murden or ETC, someone kind of more at the front of your team, protecting your team, something like that. He can work as a solo warrior, but definitely more as a second warrior. Same thing with Zarya over here. Zarya also been incredibly powerful, just very, very dominant, great win rates. All these heroes in tier 1, by the way, have got very solid win rates for the most part. The shielding she brings, it adds an extra layer of making it difficult. I think she's just very strong at team fighting and those early game skirmishes. For example, let's say on Brax's holdout, have a Zarya in your 4-man team. You got one person up in, let's say, the top lane, and then you got 4 men down the bottom lane. If you've got Zarya in there, or women, then she's going to be, just have a massive impact. Very difficult to fight through those shields, and then the damage she's doing and the zone control that she can create. Very, very powerful hero at the moment. Tyrael is really interesting. Tyrael can be a main tank for your team, and he can be a bit of a backup one if you're going with like a dive heavy team. For example, something like a Kerrigan jumps in, you jump in with the Tyrael, throw down Sanctification, she pulls people back into her Maelstrom, gets tons of damage, generates tons of shields, and they can't counterattack. Tyrael can really work like that, and he is a decent main tank. Obviously though, he doesn't bring any CC, like any substantial CC in the same way that Murden or ETC do, or Johanna does. So that makes it a little bit more awkward to slot him into every composition. But you can run him. You can also run him as a bruiser as well. However, one of the things is when you're running a second warrior as your bruiser, at the moment in the meta, that slot, the sort of second warrior slot, is kind of like a bruiser slot. It's also kind of a melee assassin slot, and that is often very much dedicated to being a strong solo laner. I think Rexxar, Dehaka, Chen, these guys all exemplify it. Zarya can't really do it because obviously she's more supportive, so you're going to need a good solo laner aside from Zarya. And Tyrael, he can solo lane, but he's not very good at it. He's just okay, so you're going to have a weak solo lane, so that's something to bear in mind. Rexxar, very, very powerful solo laner. Great at controlling mercs, controlling camps, great at controlling zones and stuff. Very unpopular hero, but one who's had a consistently extremely good win rate. So yeah, I always encourage people play Rexxar more. He's so much better than you think, but people just don't want to play him. Maybe they're not confident enough, but this guy, his win rate has just been so good for so long, and he deserves more play. Now we've got a new one. I think I moved Dehaka from tier 3 last time. He's moved up to tier 1, and this is thanks to BlizzCon and seeing what some of these teams could do with Dehaka. The thing about Dehaka is that I have seen Dehaka drafted really, really badly so many times. I've seen people just get him drastically wrong time and time again. Dehaka is really bad as a solo warrior. What Dehaka excels at is being your second warrior, building for split push, and you send him into a side lane. Imagine on something like Sky Temple or Cursed Hollow potentially. Some sort of big map. Sky Temple is the perfect example. You send him down to that top lane, people are fighting over the bottom temple, something like that, and he is just soaking up waves of experience, pushing that lane in, creating pressure on the top, then he burrows down to join the fight. That's what Dehaka's strength is. He has got a global presence. He's the only warrior with a global presence. Well, ETC can spec into it level 10, but Dehaka has it from level 1, and he doesn't give up a heroic to do it. It's just built into his kit. He's got amazing wave clear, and you can just exploit that so much to create just pressure across the map and stuff like that. I think it's going to take people a long time to work that out. I've seen basically I've only seen Dehaka actually drafted correctly once, and that was the video I put up of me playing him on my channel. and we were the final pick, so our teammates weren't able to screw it up by picking the wrong things afterwards. We were able to pick it then. But apart from that, I've seen Dahaka pick maybe 5 or 6 times. Always picked dreadfully in really bad circumstances. For example, I saw him pick like Dahaka solo warrior into Tracer Tassadar, and it's literally like Tracer just runs past him and he can do not he could literally do nothing as Tracer just kills his backline. He just sits and watches and cries, essence. But yeah, so Dahaka, he's very strong, but I do have questions as to whether people will still understand how to draft him. Hopefully you guys will have a better idea now. You can check out that video and see how he's played, but yeah, bear that in mind. Let's take a look at tier 2 then. So tier 2, Johanna, already talked about her. We got a Nubkeks, already mentioned him as well. Very, very good against mages, especially mages with skill shots. So he spawns out all these little beetles which block skill shots. Think of Kelthus' gravity lapse. Throws out that tornado looking for the stun, hits a beetle. Oh shit, there goes his big long cooldown to stun a beetle. Who cares? He also has dampen magic at level 1, so which is like spell shield, this constantly refreshing, a weak form of spell shield, refreshing very regularly, makes it very difficult for heroes like Jaina, like Li Ming to get damage down on him. Li Ming has a big problem against Nubkeks, and she's very popular. So Nubkeks he's one of those sleeper heroes at the moment. People loved him last season. He got a bit nerfed and he completely fell off. But I do think there is a big spot for him with Li Ming being pretty popular right now and burst damage being pretty popular. Is that, yeah, I mean, if they pick bursty mages, you pick a Nubkeks and you just go, hey, I block your skill shots, I don't die to your burst. Bit of a problem for you guys. Next up we got Arthas. I love Arthas. Arthas is a very strong sort of sustained warrior. He's very tanky, but it's a very sustained type of tanky, so you do need to be aware of burst damage with him. He's very good at creating a powerful zone that makes it very difficult for melee assassins to walk through him. For example, I think he's very good against Samuro, for example, right? Because he puts out this AoE slow, doing AoE damage, really makes life difficult for Samuro and his clones to actually stay on top of someone because he's getting slowed down. You can spec it to slow attack speed, to root. Love Arthas in that sort of situation. Next up we got Diablo. I think Diablo's really good at Infernal Shrines, and he's okay in a couple of other maps. He's got nice early game ganks. He does a lot of damage and a lot of AoE damage with the go for his like Fire Stomp, Firestorm build. He's 2 very good heroics actually. The only thing is he's very large, he's immobile and squishy, but yeah, on those maps he can be very, very strong. I would probably recommend, though, again, running him in a double warrior composition. Same thing with these guys, they can both be run as like bruisers, so having like a tanky thing, so less damage than the melee assassin, but tankier and more control. That's sort of a double warrior thing. Leoric now, speaking of double warrior, Leoric is a great hero for countering double warrior. He also brings pretty good wave clear, pretty good map presence, seeing as he respawns so quickly out on the map, so you can use that to exploit things. I'd probably steer away from picking him though, unless you've got a double warrior enemy team. I feel like the tier 1 heroes will serve you better. And then Stitches. Stitches is such a weird pick. It's like, if the enemy team has someone that's vulnerable to hook, I mean, Kelthus, right? Kelthus, he's huge. He's this big dude. He's got a big cape. It's really stupid to wear that. Just asking to be hooked. Kelthus very vulnerable to that. You hook in some easy enough to hit backline target that has no escape, and you can win games with hooks, and I've seen that happen. But obviously then you give up the rest. Like in a team fight, your hook isn't as useful, and then you're just not as useful as the other warriors. But he can win Hero League games. It's all about the hook. Do we have a composition that can punish someone when they're hooked? Does the enemy team have someone, or multiple targets, hopefully, that will be really unhappy if they get hooked? If they do, then Stitches can actually be quite strong. Then finally, we've got the tier 3 heroes. I think these ones are pretty weak overall. Sonya, she's just not that strong anymore. As far as bruisers go and melee assassins, I think there's so many more better options. She's obviously pretty good against something like Illidan, because she does a lot of ability damage with slams. She's good against merc camps, so you might want to run her on something like Blackheart's Bay, but generally speaking, I think she's pretty weak. Joe, also, I think at the moment he's pretty weak. Tychus is very popular. You're opening yourself up to Leoric as well. There's a few giant killer heroes that are pretty popular. I think he's okay. I think if you combo with combo Cho'Gall with Oriel, that can be very strong. But I think it's just difficult to draft in Hero League. Though I have seen people have some success, but not in quite a while. Then finally we've got Artanis. I think Artanis is just very weak. He just gets wrecked by crowd control. With the crowd control tanks, the CC tanks just being so strong right now, you're just asking for trouble. I just don't think he does very much. He just gets killed. His win rate is awful. I think that shows why. And yeah, there you go. Finally then, to look at Varian for the warrior section. I think I put Varian as a warrior probably into tier 2. This is the new way I'm going to do things with the new heroes, right? Is that you can't place them within the tier. It's just too difficult without the information and the data. I'm just going to place them. Let's say if he was tier 1, I just place him at the bottom of tier 1, bottom of tier 2, bottom of tier 3, just indicating I think this is roughly speaking the tier he's going to be at, and we'll see how things pan out. I think probably tier 2. I'm concerned for Warrior Varian about his early game. I think, this is my theory, I think he's going to be very strong with someone, basically with someone like Chen. Let's say Varian plus Chen. I think that could be a good combo because Chen can kind of solo tank a bit at the start of the game. And then as you move into the end of the game, like level 10 going forwards, Chen really falls off as a solo tank. He really struggles then, trying to use Storm, Earth and Fire and so on. And the lack of crowd control starts to hurt a lot. Whereas Varian starts to develop a lot of crowd control then from that point on. Getting Warbringer at level 4, Taunt at level 10. I mean, Warbringer level 4, that's a 1 second point and click stun every 6 seconds. That's really good. He's got a lot of lockdown, quite a lot of survivability. So I think running him with something like that, or like a Rexar, or maybe Dahaka, I'm not exactly sure, but I do feel like you could have Varian run with one of these lower CC tanks, one of these lower CC warriors, and then being fine in the early game, and then transitioning into, they kind of swap places, right? With Varian starting off, he hasn't spec'd into Taunt and into being a warrior. So he's kind of the squishier one. Then he eventually takes over as this like crowd control, zoning control machine, very survivable. And the other warrior then becomes the more damagey, bruisery one. That's what I'm kind of thinking. I'll be curious to see how it works out though. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see exactly how it pans out as the patch goes on. But that's my thinking. I feel like tier 2. And I feel like probably want to combo him with a non-CC tank. The issue is that like comboing him with like a Muradin, I feel like your team's damage is going to be really low. And it's just a bit overkill in the control. Could be wrong, but that's my general gut feeling on that. But maybe combo him with one of these other like typically not a very good solo warrior. I think he might work well there. Let's move on to assassins next. And here you go. You see some big changes to the assassin role as well. So we got 3 melee assassins for me are up in tier 1. And I think this is actually quite important to break down. First of all, we've got Kerrigan. Kerrigan's win rate has just been incredibly high for a very long time. She's just been at top level, absolutely dominant, and across multiple maps. It's not just Infernal Shrines where she was traditionally considered to be strong. She's very strong on multiple maps. Early game kill pressure, early game rotations. Yeah, she wins the early and mid game because she's so strong. She's a lot stronger than most other heroes at that stage in the game. And then you can just snowball it and take wins from there. I mean, she's been close to 60% win rate for ages. I think she's well deserved as like a tier 1 spot. Very scary hero to be picked up. Next up, we got Alarak, and Alarak is really interesting. Here's the thing about Alarak, okay? You need to sit down and say, how good am I at Alarak? If you say, I'm not very good, don't pick him. If you say, I haven't really played him much, but I think I'll be okay, don't pick him. If you say, I've played him a fair bit, and I've been doing pretty well, don't pick him. The only time you pick Alarak is when you say, oh yeah, Alarak, he's one of my main heroes. I play him all the time, and I'm great at him. Then you pick Alarak, and then Alarak is tier 1, maybe even like the best hero in the game. Alarak is a monster in the right hands. But in even slightly a little bit less than the right hands, he's absolutely terrible and falls down way far in the tier list. His win rate is garbage at the moment, really bad, but that's because people are overestimating how good they are at Alarak. You need to be really, really good, like really good at Alarak to make it work and to make him be this tier 1 hero. For example, in the game we played with the #1 Grandmaster, hey, what do you know? They banned Alarak away from him. Why? It's because this guy, I think he's a fairly new player, but he had climbed up to #1 Grandmaster just maining Alarak because it was so impactful. So yeah, I think that's the thing with Alarak. It's always interesting when he gets picked in the draft. You kind of go, okay, is this person good at Alarak? Because if yes, it's terrifying. Are they only okay? Because then it's not going to be too scary. For example, I am like level 8 on Alarak. I've got a 60% win rate. I wouldn't play him in Hero League. I'm not good enough to play him in Hero League in that sort of high pressure situation where you need to perform against opponents that are playing well. I wouldn't be confident enough yet to play him. Getting there sort of slowly, but slowly. So yeah, just bear that in mind. Really be careful about picking him. Next up we have the Butcher. The Butcher's also had a ridiculously high win rate. I think the Butcher, he's very good PvE, really good against map objectives, mercenaries, stuff like that. Then his pick potential is huge as well. The thing about the Butcher is it draws so much attention from the enemy team. They have to devote so much of their mental and in-game resources to actually stopping the Butcher and taking him out. I think that's where his great strength is. I mean, it's like you kind of go, well, the Butcher can be countered, but it's like, yes, you have to devote and invest so much into countering him that you don't have much left over to do much else. He just does. He's got great pick potential, great sort of burst. Then he also does a ton of sustained damage if he's let go in the fight. He can solo bosses. He can do a bunch of stuff. He's pretty cool, pretty powerful. Very difficult to draft, and he doesn't get played much. But when he is played, when he does fit in the draft, he has a very high win rate. He's very impactful. So I have him up here. But unlike most of the other tier 1 heroes, where if you're like good at them, you can pick them pretty much first pick, and they're going to be massively impactful. I think that's not quite the case with the Butcher. I think you have to be very careful with how you draft him. Li Ming is like the opposite, where Li Ming just fits in every draft. You can't go wrong with this hero. She's just good everywhere. Good ranged, safe burst damage. She's much safer than other ranged heroes because she has teleport. She has Illusionist at level 13 for more range than the teleport. She can get Force Armor at level 1 if she's going to be assassinated by something like a Nova or a Tracer. Like, there's just so much safety that you can build into her kit. She's just safe, consistent damage. And I think that's why she's tier 1 for me. She doesn't have maybe as big of an impact as some of these other guys, but she's just not that safe first pick that you can always grab, and she's always going to be strong. Very good on maps where there's like a lot of poke going on, like Battlefield of Eternity or Towers of Doom, something like that. Next up, we got a new hero, and this is Gul'dan, who I think I had in tier 3 before. He has shot up thanks to BlizzCon. In particular, shout out to Mene from Team Dignitas, who really showed us, how to play Gul'dan at this top level. Gul'dan has just emerged as absolutely top tier sustained damage. He really is. I was testing him out as well, and he does just absurd amount of damage. The consistent AoE damage output this guy has, it's pretty much top tier in the game. It is top tier in the game. It's quite scary, and it's a lot of wave clear as well. So you pick Gul'dan, suddenly you've got a ton of wave clear, you got a ton of damage. He works very well with someone like Oriel. He generates so much energy for her because his damage output is so high. Horrify, his heroic, very impactful in the team fights, really disrupts the enemy team, helps you get picks. He's quite tanky as well for a ranged damage dealer. He's got a lot of max health, and then he's got a number of ways to heal himself up and protect himself, so he's not as squishy as, let's say, something like a Vala or Falstad. Gul'dan, he's just very strong right now. He was a sleeper OP hero that we hadn't realized was strong until a few of these guys grabbed him and showed us, in particular, like I said, Mene, and really showed how strong Gul'dan could be. So yes, I think at the moment Gul'dan, tier 1, just super dominant, just brings so much wave clear, so much damage. Very, very scary hero. Next up, we've got Tychus, who have moved up a bit as well. I'm really liking Tychus at the moment, especially against Double Warrior. Like I said, there's a lot of strong melee assassins, so maybe you won't see him being super strong as often, but still, he is a nice, solid ranged hero. He's got good damage. He's got a nice mix of basic attacks and also ability damage. He's got 2 very good heroics, the Draken Laser Drill, nice zoning heroic, and Odin, which is just really cool. I'm really loving the Odin at the moment. Very strong in things like Infernal Shrines, stuff like that. Yeah, I think Tychus is very good. You can also minigun down Garden Terrors and Dragon Knights, which is kind of silly, but there you go. Tychus, he's a really nice, really solid ranged damage dealer. Very good, and especially against Double Warrior. Next up, we got Falstad. Global presence, Mighty Gust, just team fight control, map control, boss control. There you go. I mean, the thing with Falstad is his damage is quite a bit lower than a lot of the other assassins. That's what you get when you don't have a heroic that does damage, right? Your damage is just lower, simple as. Except for Gul'dan, because Gul'dan's awesome. But yeah, Falstad, he brings a lot of utility. That's the unique thing that he does. That's what makes him cool. That's what makes him strong. No other heroes really bring anything quite like that. He's the global assassin. So there you go. Falstad, he's been there forever, and he's still there. Even after they've nerfed him, he's still just, the utility is still so strong. And finally, we got Vala. I think Vala is just a good, solid, sustained range damage dealer. She's very nice. Again, much like Li Ming, she's kind of easy to fit into every composition. I don't think that... I have her at the bottom of tier 1 now. I've moved her down a bit because she was nerfed. I'm a bit nervous that she is very squishy and that there's a lot of strong melee assassins like Kerrigan, Alarak, Butcher, Zeratul. There's a lot of strong, even Illidan coming back in a bit. There's a lot of strong melee assassins that can pick her off because she's very squishy. She's very squishy. Like Zeratul, I'm nervous about Zeratul into Vala. I'm really nervous about that matchup for the poor Valas this patch. Really scared that she's going to be just destroyed. So we'll see. But she does nice sustained damage. She's great on like every map. She's flexible. She's fast. And yeah, she's good. I think like Gul'dan probably does more and has got better wave clear. Tyke is probably better against double warrior. Falsa brings some utility, but Vala, she's just a nice, safe, generally very applicable pick. And there you go. Going to Zeratul then in tier 2. And like I said before, the tier 2 heroes are very solid. I'm really interested about Zeratul. I was very much considering even putting Zeratul into tier 1 as well. I think Zeratul is going to be really strong. I had some people comment and be like, Zeratul sucks now. And I don't understand how that's possible when they took away talent tier at level 1, which is the worst talent tier. They removed that. Then they moved all the better talent tiers down a thing and then gave them level 13. It's like, by the time you get to level 13, right? You've basically traded a level 1 talent for a level 13 talent, which is much better. And you got all the other talents the same. You just got them earlier. So I don't understand how he could possibly be weaker. He should, in fact, be much stronger. I think he will be. I think he's going to be very scary in the early game. It's going to be really interesting to see if people are good enough and if they know enough to be able to exploit that. But yeah, against some of these top tier Grandmasters that play a lot of Zeratul, I'm pretty terrified. In fact, like I probably even would put him in tier 1. I'm really scared. I think he might be one of the dominant heroes moving forwards into the end of season 2. Like, I really do think so. I have him on the top of tier 2 here. Kind of draw some attention to him. Again, I feel like he's probably going to be a high skill cap hero as well. And he might be a little bit difficult to fit into teams. Whereas these heroes generally aren't that difficult to fit into teams, apart from maybe the Butcher. But yeah, keep an eye on the Zeratul. He could be pretty scary. Lunara as well. I think Lunara is just amazing. Just sustained AoE damage. Just poke, poke, poke. Spreading that poison everywhere. So much damage. She's fantastic. Really great hero. I have her in tier 2 because I think at the moment Gul'dan does what she does, but he does it just a bit better. Just a little bit better. Just a little bit. So I kind of feel generally, if you're picking Lunara, most of the time you're going to be leaning towards Gul'dan a bit more. But maybe only a bit more, you know. I think there's still a lot to be said for Lunara. I think she's really fantastic. Like I said, these tier 2 heroes are really good in the Assassins. Then we got Jaina. Fantastic AoE burst, AoE zone control, like the Ring of Frost combo. Very, very scary. I think Jaina is a great burst mage at the moment. And we've got Illidan, who is, I think he's about the same power level he was before. He's nice, he's solid, very difficult to draft, very easy to counter. And that's the thing, the P2R will be misleading with this one as well. I said this on the P2R coverage I did, but the P2R was dominated by just like 5 melee teams. When you go into like a proper game, a Masters level, where it's probably going to be 2 or 3 melee heroes and 2 or 3 ranged, like 2 melee, 3 ranged, or 3 melee, 2 ranged. Much more difficult to be hitting double heroes, 2 heroes with your sweeping strikes. It's going to be much harder. So hard to make use of that, the Battered Assault build. We'll see how it pans out. His other build is still good. It was nerfed slightly. So yeah, I think Illidan is still strong. I think he's difficult to draft. When you get a good draft from him, he's pretty effective. But yeah, I'm not expecting him to be... I'm expecting him to be basically just as strong as he was before. Basically, same sort of spot. Thrall has got nerfed. Well, his Sundering got nerfed. Earthquake got buffed. And I'm curious to see how things go. Bear in mind with Thrall, right? The level 20 upgrade for Earthquake is stupidly strong. It basically like applies Storm Shield to your allies with every pulse of Earthquake. Almost. It's really good. And Thrall's level 20s, you just get Bolt, which is kind of shitty. It's okay, but it's not as good as other level 20s. So yeah, I'm interested to see with Thrall exactly how he's going to pan out. Will Thrall with Earthquake work? I'm not sure. The problem with Thrall at the moment is that he gets really hurt by these CC tanks and the kind of meta that we have. I don't think this meta suits him that well. I don't know, I just feel like you get locked down and blown up before you can get your sort of sustain going. But we'll see how he works with Earthquake. Sundering has been nerfed, so I'm putting him in tier 2. He's always nice and solid and consistent. I just don't know if the game suits him at the moment, and I'm not sure how these heroic changes are going to affect him. We'll see. And finally, I've got Tracer in here. Combine Tracer with Tassadar, she's tier 1. It's just disgusting. Other than that, I think she's tier 2. She's good, she's solid, she's okay. Yeah, I think she's an okay hero. She's fine. It's just all about, can you get Tassadar with her? If you do, it's horrible. If you don't, she's alright. She combos pretty well with Abathur as well. But, a little bit. I don't know. Interesting hero, Tracer. Very interesting hero. I think she's okay. She's okay. And finally, we've got tier 3. I think these ones are quite a lot weaker, actually. I think with the Warriors and the Assassins, I think, tier 1 is very strong and tier 2 is very strong too. I think tier 3 is quite a lot weaker. So you got Nova. Nova's very good on some maps. Her ganks are very strong. And, she's ranged. She's safe in that sense. Yeah, Nova's good-ish. And we got Raynor. Raynor, same sort of thing. Just sort of safe range damage. But he lacks a lot of burst. He's quite weak in the early game. But late game, things can turn out okay. He scales very well. So Rainer's alright. Same thing with Chromie. She's got this sort of range burst, but she's kind of inconsistent though. You can have great games on Chromie where you're hitting everything, then you can have bad games where you're hitting nothing. So I'm concerned about her inconsistency, though she is good on maps like Towers of Doom where people are stacked up a bit more in these sort of narrow choke points. I got Greymane as well. Greymane is okay. He's just been nerfed a lot and he's just not that great. We might see him come back at some stage, but he's more of like an anti-mage thing. We don't have a lot of mages being played right now. Then we got Samuro. Samuro's been nerfed to crap. People, this was not this patch, but actually the last little patch that we had was when they nerfed him to crap. I think he's still quite good actually on the lower tiers. I think his win rate is still very high, but at top level he's rubbish. He's really bad. Like he literally has one of the worst win rates in the game. He really sucks, basically. And people haven't realized yet, I was still seeing a lot of Samuro bans. Even still a fair few Samuro picks. I really think you want to steer away from him. I think he's very weak. That's the thing. In top level play, it's very difficult to get the sustained basic attack damage off if you're a melee hero, because you get punished, you get targeted and taken out, and there's a lot of CC and control and synergy and focus. He just gets destroyed. He's very good at killing mercs. He's very good at map objectives. But he's not good in the solo lane because he's got no sustain. I just think he's really bad. Kelthus, this is a bit of a spite placement for me. I've just lost so many games with Kelthus. It's like, stop first picking Kelthus, please. Pick something better. Kelthus is just very meh. I think the thing with Kelthus for me is that he's like a burst mage, but it's like the burst is AoE, and they sort of split it up, so it's not really burst damage. It's AoE, so it's sort of sustained damage, but on burst damage cooldowns. He's in a weird spot right now. I think it's just a bad spot. I know some people think he's good. I just think he's rubbish. I haven't seen him do anything much very good. He comes away with high damage stats, but it's really unimpactful damage. I don't know. I don't know why you pick Kelthus when you can pick Gul'dan or Lunara or Jaina. Like, Jaina does way more burst damage. Like, you see Jaina explode people. Like, Ring of Frost into, like, a Cone of Cold vulnerability into Blizzard into Ring of Frost. People explode. Kelthus doesn't do that. It's the sort of slow, sustained AoE damage. It's just, I haven't seen it be good. And if you're going for sort of slow, sustained AoE damage, go for, like, Vala or Gul'dan or Lunara. Someone does it better. That's my thoughts on that. And then we've got Gall. Gall just is bad. Gall's just not that good at the moment. Same, if Cho isn't good, then Gall's not good. Let's put it that way. All right, we need to do Varian. I got Ragnaros ready as well. Hey, Ragnaros. Varian, I think, is going to be tier 2. Again, we're placing him at the end of tier 2 just to indicate that he is tier 2. We're not saying where in the tier he would fall because it's too early to say. I think the nice thing about Varian is that you've got the two builds. I think Colossus Smash will be better, but I think the win rate is crappy at the moment. But I've played with them both on the live service, and I actually quite like Colossus Smash. You do a lot of burst, and it's particularly in high level. Like I said before, it's very difficult on Samuro, and again, Varian's sustained Twin Blades build is very like Samuro. It's very hard to actually consistently get off those melee attacks. You need to be enabled so much by your teammates in order to do that. So I think it's going to be difficult to draft that thing. It's like Illidan is difficult to draft for. You need a team that supports Illidan, and you need the enemy team to have not countered him too much. It's difficult to draft. I think the same thing will be true of Varian. In fact, even more so, because I feel like he lacks like the mobility and utility of a Samuro and Illidan to actually get in there and get their attacks off a little bit. I don't know. I'm skeptical. We'll see, though. But the ideal, of course, would be to play Twin Blades. And I think that's one of the interesting things, is that, you could pick Varian early in the draft and go, all right, I'm going to play Twin Blades. If they counterpick Twin Blades, if they counterattack that sustained melee damage, you just go, all right, I'll just switch to Colossus Smash. And suddenly the enemy team have spent their picks countering a hero that's not even going to be in the game, basically, because you've switched your roles completely to burst damage. And suddenly all this sustained blinds and healing, like they pick Lily as a second support for like sustained healing and sustained blinds, and you just go, well, we're just going to burst you and you're going to die. And the sustained healing of Lily is not going to do anything, and the blinds don't matter because it happens too fast. So yeah, I think that's the strength of Varian, is the fact that you can switch so drastically. And it's difficult then to counterpick him a bit. I'm just concerned that he doesn't seem, again, like I said, the sort of melee assassin role is often quite a solo lane heavy kind of thing, a bruiser. So I think he doesn't seem to do that very well. I don't know. I'm curious about it. I think he's going to be good and solid. I like that you can switch up your things a lot. I think the big deal with Varian, by the way, for both tank and for this, is that you really, really, really want to pick Warbringer at level 4. In fact, I think that's probably the most important thing. Having a 6-second cooldown, 1-second point and click stun is such a huge deal, as opposed to having a 16-second slow. And it's a gap closer as well. So you really want to get that, which means he's going to be pretty good against like parry teams. Like I found on the PTR, for example, he's very good against Illidan because you've got like parry on a short cooldown and a couple of charges, so you neutralize a lot of Illidan's damage against you, and then like a point and click stun every 6 seconds really locks him down and makes life difficult. So I think he's going to be strong in those senses. He's probably actually be pretty good against Tracer as well. Interesting. But yeah, I'm curious to see where he ends up. Again, like I said, my inclination is to say that at higher levels, for melee heroes in particular, Burst is much better, and you can see that the fact that I've got Kerrigan, Alarak, and the Butcher are like my top melee assassins, whereas we've got like Illidan and Thrall much lower down, and Samuro and Greymane are much lower down. I think that's just the meta at the moment. It's very hard to get sustained melee damage off. It's much easier for melee assassins to be bursty. So yeah, I'm nervous about Varian. We'll see exactly how it pans out. But I do think that he could become very strong. I think the key to unlocking a higher win rate with him will be being flexible in how you play him. You know, it's not good enough to be like, well, I just play Twin Blades Varian and that's it. You're going to screw yourself over. You need to be able to play each type of Varian and be able to switch up his build. And players that are smart, that can work out the draft from their team and the enemy team and go, okay, this build actually is going to work the best in this game, and we're going to switch up this talent at this tier, and that's going to actually really enable us to do this and this and this. That's where Varian's strength will really come in, exploiting the fact that he's multi-class. So that's what I think about that. Now we got a couple of smaller roles here, which will be easier to get through. A bit of an info dump for those two. Like I said, again, bearing in mind the S tier stuff and what's going to happen. Over here in tier, in support, I'll probably give S tier to probably Malfurion, who's a big pain in the ass to play against. He just does so much healing. I think he's a bit is overtuned. He's been, even after the nerfs, he still does a little bit too much. The roots are fantastic at zoning and for getting picks. He just does a lot of sustained healing. And then both of his heroics are quite good. Twilight Dream can just wreck face as well and win team fights. So I think Malfurion is number one. I'd moved him down because I thought the nerfs would affect him more. They didn't. I think he's still number one. So yeah, number one support Malfurion. He'd be the S tier one. Then you got Oriel and Brightwing, who are both very strong. Brightwing obviously brings global presence, which is fantastic. She's pretty good as well at shutting down melee assassins because she gives block charges and she can polymorph them, which is pretty nice, and even get Emerald Wind if needs be. Then we got Oriel, who's very strong as well. She depends on having a good damage dealer, so it's going to depend on what sort of assassins you have. For example, like I said before, she combos exceptionally well with Gul'dan and Lunara, who do very high, very sustained damage. It gives her this constant, steady, and powerful stream of energy to spend, so she gets tons of healing out. The thing with Oriel, her weakness, of course, is that if your team isn't doing damage, she can't do any healing. So if you're just getting poked out of it, if they've got a crazy poke comp, if they have like Li Ming, I don't know, they've got like Li Ming, Falstad, or Chromie, or something like that, just throwing this poke into you over and over again, you can just be wrecked if you don't have some way to generate your energy. You can just find yourself going like, I literally can't heal anyone. We haven't done any damage. Our health bars are going down. We're just stuck. That's her weakness. So a bit of a drafting thing there with her in particular. We've got tier 2. We've got Uther here. I think Uther could be quite good. Again, like I said, there's a lot of strong melee assassins right now, and that's what Uther does best. He empowers melee assassins. You know, the Butcher charges in. Hey, Divine Shield on the Butcher. Go have fun. Kerrigan dives in. Divine Shield on Kerrigan. Go have fun, Kerrigan. Stuff like that. She's really good at that. Or even kind of protecting other heroes. He's not bad. Again, when these ones are picked away, Uther's just a good, solid hero, healer to have around. I'm curious about the Karazim rework. We'll see how he comes into it. Next up, we've got Tyrande. I think Tyrande is amazing. She works best as like a second support, so you run her as a second support. She brings a lot of kill pressure with Hunter's Mark. She brings some vision with her Owls. Starfall is amazing zone control and team fight damage. She does a lot. She's really good. You can even run her with Shadowstalk as well, though you don't want to, in my opinion. You don't want to do that. But yeah, I just feel like she brings good damage and just huge kill pressure with the Hunter's Mark, enabling her teammates even more. I love Tyrande. I think she's fantastic. Tassadar, I have him up in tier 2 as well. Again, he combos very well with sort of basic attack based assassins or melee assassins. So he works fantastically with, I mean, like, he works great with the Butcher, he works great with Greymane, He works great, amazing with Illidan and Tracer. Obviously, would be the most obvious ones, I suppose. He just lets them dive in with impunity. He works very well with Vala too, just helping these sort of squishy melee or squishy basic attack heroes just heal themselves a ton. Just get a lot more damage out. He also counters stealth heroes, which would be pretty good with the Zeratul buffs. And yeah, I think Tassadar is a good solid hero, very much underrated. It's all about, does he fit in that second support role of like empowering your team? And we got Lily, and I think Lily again should be a second support. She fits so well in the second support role. She does a surprising amount of damage, right? She does a surprising amount of damage. It's this sort of sustained range damage, more than you think. She does the sort of steady sustained healing as well, and she brings blinds. She's very good against, Illidan, something like that. Really shuts him down. We've seen pro teams do that in BlizzCon. We've seen them pick up the Lily and just shut down poor old Illidan. He tries to do his thing, and Lily is there and just makes his life a misery. So yeah, Lily, she's got a spot. I don't like her much as a solo support though. She heals quite slowly, so she struggles. Then we got tier 3. I think tier 3, there's a spot for these guys, so I do think they're a little bit weaker. I'm not sure about Karasim, because Karasim has been reworked. I'm not sure how it's going to work out. We might actually see him. He might actually be tier 2, and he could be a good pickup as a backup healer in case like the tier 1 ones are gone. Karasim could be quite nice. You have the option of 7-sided strike as well, which is interesting. I think probably the big thing with him is going to be that level 4, the Earth Ally, which blocks basic attacks. If the enemy team is running a very basic attack heavy composition, I think Karasim could be very strong there. Because that's a pretty powerful tool to have in a team fight. Curious about that one. We'll see how he pans out. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up. I don't think he's tier 1, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was tier 2. We'll see. We will see. I think Morales is good. She can be exploited. You can actually combo her with Gul'dan, and that can be pretty interesting, right? I mean, you could have something like Gul'dan, and I don't know. You could have, what would be a composition that would work well with that? Something you could stim drone. You might not even want stim drone. I mean, the dropship is really nice as well, getting global presence. But yeah, just sustained healing. Be careful that they can't dive you and kill her. But she works well in certain compositions where she's going to be safe and good on the 2-lane maps as well, stuff like that, where she can win sort of early game lanes. So there's a spot for her, but she's awkward to fit into the draft and can be countered. Then we got Rhaegar, who's just not performing that well at the moment. He's very vulnerable to getting killed himself. It's very hard to get the value out of Rhaegar because his wolf is so much slower now. You can't heroic yourself, Oriel can Aegis herself. Rhaegar can't ancestral himself, and that does hurt a little bit. So it's difficult to get value out of the aggressive parts of his kit because you put yourself in so much danger. He's just not doing that well, but he can be okay as like a backup healer who's got okay AoE heals with chain heal and then a burst heal with ancestral. He's all right, but he just doesn't shine as much as the other ones at all, in my opinion. And finally, we have the specialists. Specialists are quite interesting, I think, as opposed to some of the other roles. I think actually all 3 tiers are decent enough. Tier 1 definitely stands head and shoulders above the rest, though, a little bit. The Lost Vikings, they're very good. Very, very good on several maps now. Warhead Junction's not bad. Garden of Terror is very good. Dragonshire is quite good. Towers of Doom is quite good. I mean, big maps where people can spread around, getting the XP soak. Vikings are just fantastic. They always have been top of the win rates, and they continue to be, and I think will continue to be for quite a while, and certainly for this patch. Then we got Sergeant Hammer. Sergeant Hammer is so underrated at the moment. Remember when Sergeant Hammer got all those buffs and suddenly everyone was playing her? Even people were banning her all the time. She was top win rate in the game. Well, guess what? She's still like near the top win rate, but suddenly no one really is playing her. She's suddenly gone really unpopular and people have moved away from her. She's still amazing. She's still really strong, and people need to go back to playing her more because that's such a powerful hero that people are neglecting. I think the big thing with that was that Vala got buffed at the same time, and then Vala was just a faster, more flexible, sustained, ranged, right-click kind of based damage dealer. So people opted into Vala. But with Vala being nerfed, I think you guys really need to move back to playing Sergeant Hammer some more. I think she's really strong. Sylvanas, obviously very strong as well. She's got good wave clear. Wailing Arrow is quite powerful, and then she really enables pushing on maps like Tomb of the Spider Queen, Infernal Shrines, Battlefield of Eternity, whatever you have. She makes those pushes, Braxis Holdout, makes the pushes much stronger, very strong on those maps. You all know about Sylvanas. And then we got Zool. Zool is great on the smaller maps where you can rotate between a couple of lanes and just get pushes in, get those towers down, just wave clear, wave clear, wave clear. It's all about the wave clear, and then some decent kind of control in the team fights as well. I always find Zool a little bit difficult to fit into a team comp because his team fight damage is pretty awful. Also, the roots can get you picks though as well. I think Zool is quite good. I have him on the bottom of tier 1. I think that kind of explains it well. He brings a ton of wave clear, a lot of control. His damage isn't great, but yeah, there you go. Next we got Medivh. Medivh is another one of those heroes like Alarak where he's very difficult to play. He's got a bad win rate, but in the good hands, in right hands, he's amazingly impactful. I'm gonna leave him in tier 2 for the moment. I think that's pretty fair. Yeah, he counters burst heroes quite well with his force of will. He can enable some really interesting plays. I think Medivh is very strong, but it does depend on being in the hands of a good player. Next up we got Gazlo, who is another underrated hero. Very strong at like zone controls. Anywhere where you can like set up turrets somewhere that people need to go, and he just gets them going with like the clockwork fists. Yeah, Gazlo he's better than you think. He definitely is better than you think. Very unpopular, but he's got a nice solid win rate. He does have a nice solid win rate. It's all about getting him on maps where you can set up turrets somewhere that they have to go. One thing is I've seen people think he's good on Cursed Hollow. I think he's really not good at Cursed Hollow. I think he's really not good there because you've got a big map. You're fighting over these things in the middle. There's not much for you to punch. It becomes very difficult. And people can kind of work their way around the choke points, and they normally have a lot of poke going in. I'm not sure about that one, but like maybe Infernal Shrines he'd be quite good on, something like that. Maybe Sky Temple as well could be very strong there too. I don't know. There's a few maps he could be very good on. Next we got Nazeebo. Nazeebo is weird. He's such a weird hero. I think he's okay. I think he's solid. He does like okay sustained damage, not the best. He's got the superstition thing though at level 13, which is pretty cool. So you can really pick him into an ability heavy damage enemy team. It reduces the amount of damage he takes from abilities by half, but makes basic attacks hit him 30% harder. So if they don't have any basic attack heroes, Nazeebo can be really good and gets good pushes going and stuff like that. He's okay. He's tier 2. I think he's very tier 2. He's quite okay. He's not amazing. He's not awful. He's just quite okay. And there you go. And that's his sort of niche against ability heavy teams. And we got tier 3. And like I said, these guys aren't awful. They're not awful. Maybe Murky's awful. The rest of them aren't awful. The rest of them are alright. We got Abathur. Abathur's another one of those heroes. Is like, if you're very good at Abathur, great, go for it. He combos very well with things like Illidan, with maybe Tracer, Muradin, Chen. There's a few heroes he combos well with. Heroes that are going to be in on top of the enemy team, and he can get value out of like Hive Mind, for example, stuff like that. I think Abathur can be quite strong. It's always a risk because your early game is weaker. But if you're good at Abathur, he can be good, and if you comboed it well with something, it can be good, but definitely be cautious about Abathur. Zagara, again, I think she's rather weak overall. She's okay. She can push well. She doesn't have any self-sustain, though. You can go for the Nidus network, but it makes your team fight quite weak, but you got some map presence. I just think she's okay. She doesn't really stand out to me as being very good. I'd probably steer away and go for something else, honestly, myself. Same thing with Azmodan. I think he's okay. He can work very well, creating map pressure and stuff, but I just feel like there's, generally speaking, better picks than him. But like I said, these ones, they're all right, and you can fit them in certain compositions and in certain maps, and they'll do pretty well. But generally, I don't know. Abathur definitely, more so than the others here in this tier, does fit. You can maybe stick him into tier 2, because he does have a very specific niche where he can be very strong. So there you go. And there you go, guys. That is all the tier list to go show you guys. Once again, here we go. This is the warrior tier. Here we have the assassin tier, the special support tier, and finally the specialist tier. The S tier specialist for me would probably be let's just say the Lost Vikings. Again, we'll just pick one. We'll pick one from the supports and the specialists because they're such small things. So I say Malfurion, the Lost Vikings. Again, the S tier over here would probably be Kerrigan, Alarak, and the Butcher. And then S tier warriors would be Muradin and ETC. And there you go, guys. I hope you found that helpful. Give it a thumbs up if you did. Give any feedback you want down in the comments. Again, let me know what you think about breaking up these things into maybe an S tier as well, or like an F tier as well, potentially. I know I don't want to get it too crowded, but I feel like, let's say the assassins especially, there's a lot of assassins. And it might be just a little bit hard to read this and kind of parse through it. So I think maybe splitting them up in a little bit more might be helpful in that sort of situation. Let me know what you think about that. And good luck in your Hero League games going forward into this end of Season 2. I look forward to playing it myself, the Road to Grandmaster. And yeah, I'll see you guys all next time for more Here's the Storm. Bye-bye.